Welcome to Project Revelation.
Right before Russia invaded Ukraine, somebody in Moscow took this very interesting video of a UFO. There is an undeniable connection between nuclear weapons and UFO sightings for many years now. In fact, the Navy declassified an incident where a UFO appeared over a missile silo in Great Falls, Montana, and temporarily disabled 2 of their nuclear weapons. Since then, there have been many other incidences just like this. And believe it or not, there are conspiracy theories that float around the internet about a secret meeting between ETs and a sitting US president. Allegedly, they asked the president to disarm his nuclear arsenal. Is it possible that there is an alien race watching over our planet that can control our weapons? Or is this a huge deception that has been playing out for thousands of years? Well, that's what we're gonna try to find out.
The ETs have assets deployed around the Earth, under the oceans, out in our solar system, etc.
My name is Mike Stibs, and this is Project Revelation. Now, I spend a lot of my time researching Bible prophecy and finding out if it's fitting into our current events. It's important for you to know that I'm presenting some possibilities that are subject to change based on the Word of God that's not subject to change. I believe it's important to look at Bible prophecy not just as God showing us the future, but also a pattern that we find in history. So this pattern has been playing out since the beginning of time, and eventually it will be playing out in the exact end time scenario. But the when, we just don't know, but we can identify the pattern. So having said that, let's begin to investigate this strange connection between UFO sightings and nuclear missile silos. I've been hearing some interesting language taking place in the UFO community recently. I've heard people saying things like this. Ever since the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has escalated, this is now an opportunity for the aliens to reveal themselves to humanity. But is that really true? Ever since the conflict has escalated, there has been a little bit more activity in the sky. For instance, check out this one that the New York Post just released.
It's definitely not a kite, and it's not a bird. Here's a bird. Here's a bird. There's a bird. But this is not a bird. In the same spot.
But is there a connection between UFOs and Russia? Let's go back to 2009 when a triangular UFO was hovering over the Kremlin.
The Sun reported Friday a large, unidentified flying object hovering over Moscow's Kremlin. According to The Sun, witnesses said the pyramid-shaped object could be as big as a mile wide. And while Russian reports have ruled out UFO speculation, The Sun says the police have refused to comment and aerospace experts are stumped.
Now here is one that showed up right before the Russian invasion into Ukraine. This is remarkably similar to the one in 2009. So my question to you is, what's going on here? Let me know in the comment section below. So you may or may not know this, but there's a long history of UFOs showing up around nuclear missile sites. Check out this story that comes from Great Falls, Montana. It was mid-March 1967 when the Montana missiles malfunctioned. Robert Salas, a young missileer stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, tells this extraordinary story. Awake and alert underground in the morning, while his commander rested in a 2-person compartment where men manage missiles, Robert was alerted by security guards up top. They told him they were seeing strange lights in the sky. Robert says he thought they were just pulling his leg, but about 10 minutes later the phone rang again. This time they were extremely frightened, Robert says. He was looking right at the thing, a glowing red object, oval-shaped and some 40 feet in diameter, and it was hovering above the front gate. Robert Salas claims that 2 of the nuclear missiles were rendered inoperable the same night. After the incident, Robert had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But then in 1994, Robert came across a book by Timothy Good entitled Above Top Secret, The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up, and was shocked to find his story in the book. The Air Force had declassified the information. Now Robert has been on a mission to share his story. And this is not an isolated incident. Check out this report that Mr. George Knapp put together.
As the I-Team's George Knapp reports, some of these close encounters go far beyond mere lights in the sky.
The connection between UFOs and nuclear weapons has been documented as far back as the very first atomic blast, the Trinity explosion in 1945 New Mexico. Since then, hundreds of former military personnel have come forward with reports of unknown craft buzzing nuclear tests, atomic labs, and missile bases. A group of former officers told about their encounters at a Washington news conference in October of this year. Investigator Robert Hastings has obtained hundreds of pages of once classified Pentagon files about these incidents and has personally interviewed more than 150 retired military officers about ominous encounters involving nuclear weapons.
UFOs have routinely monitored our nuclear weapons going back decades.
The national security implications are a major reason former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid co-sponsored a once-secret UFO investigation overseen by the DIA. But the UFO nukes connection is much stranger than mere unknown craft in the sky. On the outskirts of Las Vegas, an obscure part of the Nellis Air Force Base range, designated Area 2, has for decades been a reputed repository for nuclear warheads. As many as 200 nukes are said to be stored in Area 2's bunkers. 3 layers of heavily armed Air Force security teams patrol the area 24/7, watching for any attempted intrusions.
So on 2 occasions, we had an alert that was called where there was unidentified flying object over Area 2.
This former security officer says intrusions didn't only happen in the sky. There were multiple incidents of bizarre shadow people seen in and around Area 2, including one dramatic incident from 1991 when security teams were on high alert.
This person was never found, but the airman that had seen this person described them as being really tall, like 7 foot, and like I said, moving very fast. It was very strange.
So when I got there, I was straight security.
Another Area 2 security officer, Chris Cabrera, heard the stories of shadow people, but didn't know if they were real until he had his own encounter.
And when I turned around, there was this black mass form. I don't know what you would call it. It looked like I don't even know how to describe it. Like it looked like a person, but it didn't have definitive shape of a head.
Like vague, like a mist or something?
No mist. It was black. It was like a dark blob, but it had like a rounded top, like a head almost, and almost like a shoulder.
As with the UFO incidents, the sightings of dark, unknown intruders were taken seriously at the time. Officers were on alert as they searched Area 2, but never found a trace of the running figures. Their commanders told them that, quote, it never happened. Investigator Robert Hastings says similar bizarre incidents have been reported at multiple nuclear bases, and none of the mystery encounters, either in the sky or on the ground, have ever been solved. George Knapp, 8 News Now.
So who is showing up at these nuclear missile sites? Is this an ancient alien race that has been working behind the scenes for thousands of years, and they're just waiting for humans to be ready so they can reveal themselves to us? Well, that's what Dr. Stephen Greer would have you believe.
Now, So here we are in 2022 facing this situation. But people need to understand that the ETs have assets deployed around the Earth, under the oceans, out in our solar system, etc. And those are for these worst case scenarios that I mentioned in this comprehensive assessment paper that's in our first book. I've never really talked about this explicitly, something that I call the cosmic organization. There's an interplanetary organization, it's cosmic, that have certain principles. And one of them is that they do not invade and enforce their level of civilization on a less developed civilization. They watch, they may do things behind the scenes, and they have. For example, 20th anniversary of the Disclosure Project, everyone saw this. It's up on our YouTube channel now. We had a Russian general talking about how they had a nuclear weapon overheating. And ETs went in and sort of put everyone in sort of a suspended animation while they went in and fixed this so it didn't blow up. Why? Because if that missile had exploded, the US might have thought that they were doing a launch, or we were entering into DEFCON 1, Defense Condition 1, where all nuclear missiles would be launched. So the ETs absolutely have done a few things like that to keep us from the worst case scenarios happening, very behind the scenes. And that's not the only one. Similar events have happened in the United States that I have personal knowledge of from Disclosure Project witnesses.
There are some very interesting theories that have been floating around for quite some time in regards to President Eisenhower having an impromptu meeting with an alien race.
They were very friendly, human-like aliens, and he talked to them and they spoke English and conveyed their concern about our atomic testing, which we were doing very recklessly back then. We know they were able to speak our language and they knew we were conducting atomic testing, so that means they were here monitoring us for some time. In 2017, a government document surfaced. It was for a Defense Intelligence Agency briefing for the new president of the United States in January of '89. It surfaced in 2017. It was leaked, and it talked about there is extraterrestrial contact going on, and that it mentions Eisenhower met with these aliens and formed a kind of treaty with them.
I got this document that was an account of someone who was at that meeting that the French intelligence had about the meeting with Eisenhower and these ETs out in the desert near where Edwards Air Force Base is now, but this is 1956, where they were asking us to put down arms, to become peaceful, to do things for the Earth and its environment, and to be in space peacefully. Eisenhower was inclined to do so. The warmongers, the war profiteers, the industrial fascists said no. And then they further later cut him, the president, Eisenhower, out of the loop.
Now, Dr. Stephen Greer has been encouraging people for quite some time now to contact these entities through a process of transcendental meditation. He even has an app that you can buy for your smartphone that assists you in the process of contacting these aliens. It's called the CE5 protocol. Now, this sounds all too familiar. Famous occultist Aleister Crowley did exactly the same thing. In Aleister's day, he claims to have contacted several different entities through something he called the Lamb Statement. Like Dr. Greer's CE5 protocol, Aleister Crowley's Lamb Statement is a list of things to do. And if you do these things, they promise contact with an ancient alien civilization that is itching to give you messages.
And I never talk about this in a form this big, but time is getting short. If some of these worst case scenarios play out, and there is an intervention that's very large from this cosmic organization, they're going to need people here, humans, to interface with. I doubt it's going to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or at the Pentagon. It's going to be you and however many hundreds of thousands of people are going to see this. You need to own that responsibility. Because what I've learned from the ETs is that when they had the betrayals and the things that happened in the 40s and 50s, they have turned increasingly to the masses, the people in contact. That's why contact is happening.
It's happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. And so if you just make a little effort in that direction, get the CE5 Contact app, adapt it to your own needs and interests. I mean, I have no attachment to, it's the concepts and the intent that's important. But that's a starting point. It works. And then put yourself at service to the universe. Put yourself at service to humanity. That's what I've always tried to do, to the extent of my frailty of being a human. And I think that that's what everyone should aspire to do and actually then do it. It's time to get out of the head space and intellect and actually get into the deeper heart and spirit of this and act.
Imagine a world that gets so chaotic and so disorderly that if and when this alien civilization shows up, people will actually acknowledge them as the saviors of mankind. Dr. Greer claims that the ETs he's in contact with say they need 1% of the population to contact them in order for them to be able to reveal themselves. Greer has been spreading awareness of this and even has celebrities like Demi Lovato to help advance this alien agenda. All of this is very reminiscent of the story of Lucifer trying to exalt himself above God in Isaiah 14. For centuries, our enemy has been trying to get humanity to worship him rather than the true God. Revelation tells an interesting story of the end of our current age. It's filled with catastrophes and otherworldly beings that participate in the end of the world as we know it. Given the condition of the world right now, I submit to you that we are one generation from the falling away that is spoken of in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way, and then the lawless one will be revealed. I believe that the body of Christ is the restrainer of these beings and of the Antichrist. Because we are still here on this earth praying and taking authority over these demonic entities, they're unable to manifest in their fullness. I foresee a time that's soon to come when the Church of Christ loses all their influence on the earth. When it comes to these UAPs and who's ever flying them, showing us that they're able to control our nuclear weapons, this could play into how the Antichrist comes to power. Let's consider Revelation chapter 13, verses 13 and 14. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. Let me bring your attention to the great signs and wonders that make the entire world worship Antichrist. Working through the false prophet and the Antichrist, perhaps Satan deceives the whole world through saving us from a nuclear holocaust and earns the trust of the entire planet. Of course, the world would not know that Satan was behind this. Maybe these alien beings disarm all the nuclear weapons at the very last second in a global war of some sort, and then a charismatic world leader with the false prophet that's mentioned in Revelation 13 convinces the whole entire world that these are good beings and have our best interest in mind. Then these beings would be introduced as our creators, and they have been watching us all throughout history. And perhaps they would then tell us that we have misunderstood biblical events of the past, and that they were behind everything, leading us rather than God. This is the exact scenario that Dr. Stephen Greer is setting us up for. Now, I believe that Mr. Greer fits the prototype, along with others, of what the false prophet looks like. He says that the ETs have the technology to eradicate poverty worldwide.
I always tell people bringing out these new technologies is about truly power to the people, literally, in terms of energy power. The governments are not going to fix this problem. We had concluded by 1997, 98, that the people of the world are going to have to unite. They're going to have to fund and support these technologies. They're going to have to bring them out open source.
Ultimately, the false prophet will work in conjunction with the Antichrist to change politics, finance, and religion. They will introduce an entirely different view on cosmology and convince the world that the God of the Bible does not exist. As a Christian, your purpose here on this earth has never been more clear than it is right now. There is a war taking place in the heavens between these fallen rebellious entities and you and me, the church. Your prayers are very powerful. When you are praying for a family member or a friend to come to the knowledge of Jesus Christ, this is an act of warfare. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 4 tells us that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God. When a Christian prays a sincere prayer from the heart, the entire kingdom of God is behind them. And please, if you liked this video, please share it wherever you are inhabiting the social media world. And leave a comment and let me know what you think about these huge topics that we are being confronted with every single day. And I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to everybody who has subscribed to this channel. I love you. Until we meet again, go forth and bear some fruit.